How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over bone functions and bone classifications. This is going to be the start of our series on bones. So pretty important, especially here, going through the functions that the bones contribute to the body and the classifications for when we learn about specific bones later on down the road. So this picture we have here is the cover slide for the post about bone functions. And I thought it was a good one because it kind of sums up all the functions all in one picture. Looks nice, has a lot of colors. So you see the protects internal organs, stores and releases fat, produces blood cells, stores and releases minerals, facilitates movement, and supports the body. So really for this topic right here, you can kind of remember everything just from this photo alone, but you can always go more in depth and stuff, and that's what I'll do in these slides. Alright, so fat storage, as you can see, primarily takes place in the yellow bone marrow. So if you have a bone here, very bad drawing, I know. That's very bad. Let me try again. Trying to get it to at least look like a dog bone or something. So this shaft right here is called your diaphysis, and that is where your yellow bone marrow is going to be. And in the yellow bone marrow, the fats are primarily stored in the form of triglycerides. And then when the body needs nutrients, needs energy, whatever, it's going to go to your bone and get that fat from the yellow bone marrow. So very important for, regulation of energy when necessary. Alright, here we have hematopoiesis, a very big word. Took me a while to learn how to say that. Still don't know if I'm saying it right. But this is essentially the production of red blood cells. Not red blood cells specifically, but also white blood cells and platelets. So your red blood cells are going to be what carries the oxygen within your body. Your white blood cells are going to be your immune cells like macrophages, T cells, B cells, things like that. And then your platelets, if I remember correctly, is what's used in clotting, like when you bleed. Platelets come and form a sort of barrier to prevent further blood loss. So hematopoiesis is going to occur in the red bone marrow, which is typically by the spongy bone of a bone. So if I draw this horrific bone again, I'm going to try to get a pen soon, guys, don't worry. So I said last time that your yellow bone marrow is going to be in this shaft here, which is your diaphysis, and we'll go into that more later. The red bone marrow is typically over here and over here in the proximal and distal epiphysis of a bone. So very important to know that as well, and very important function of bones, because if there's no blood cell production, you're cooked. Alright, another really important one, especially for regulation of minerals in the blood, is mineral storage. So in the bones, your minerals like calcium and phosphorus are going to be stored as hydroxyapatite crystals. So it's pretty much collagen that comes together with calcium and phosphorus and a couple other, smaller minerals to be stored in the bone. And this system allows for regulation of minerals in the blood. When those minerals are deficient in your blood, your body can access it from the bones to increase those levels. When they are extremely high in the blood, they're in excess, your body can store some of those minerals in your bones to lower it, keep it at optimal levels, and then it can retain it again if necessary. Alright, so you have movement, pretty simple here. It's going to be involved in coordinating the movement of the body. Some examples here is going to be your ligaments, which goes bone to bone. You'll see some ligaments that we'll cover when we go into the specific locations of bones and the bones in your body. There's some pretty important ones, especially in your vertebral column. And then you have tendons, which pretty much does bone to muscle. Also very important, and I'm sure we'll cover a bunch of that in the muscular system when we do content review there. I think this is the last one in terms of functions. I kind of grouped it into one because they're pretty similar, or just so simple that you don't really have to have, a separate slide for each. But support and protection. So in terms of support, clearly the bones are going to serve as the framework of your body. Your body is kind of shaped by the way your bones are laid out, your skeletal system. So it's going to provide extreme support there. And then it also provides a lot of protection, and a lot of that protection is mainly going to come from your axial skeleton. So to put it brief, your axial skeleton is going to be your head and like your rib cage stuff. We'll go into this more in a later video, but that's pretty much what your axial skeleton is. The other half is going to be your appendicular skeleton, and that's going to come with your arms, and your legs. Your appendicular skeleton is going to be more for movement and locomotion, while the axial skeleton, like I said, is mainly going to be for protection. Your rib cage protects your lungs, your heart, stuff like that. So that's another pretty important function for bones. I think that was it. So your next one is going to be bone classifications, I believe. So this is kind of the cover photo for the post. Once again, I felt like it was a very good picture here from theskeletalsystem.net. I think that's what it says. Covers all 5 classifications. You have long bone, which is, the more stereotypical bone, short bone, flat bone, irregular bone, and sesamoid bone. And then it also provides an example of each type of bone, and we'll get into that here more in depth. So like I said, long bones are kind of your stereotypical picture of a bone. What I was attempting to draw earlier was a long bone. Not very good at it, obviously, but long bones are going to be longer, hence the name, than they are wide. That's how you can pretty much tell which is a long bone. So you have your humerus, that's a long bone. You can tell there it's longer than it is wide. Your tibia, your fibula, your radius, your ulna, your humerus, all those going to be long bones. Remember, just have to be longer than they are wide. Pretty simple. Main function of long bones is support and movement. Alright, so your next type of bones is going to be short bones. These are typically cube-like in shape, as you can see here. Good example are going to be your carpal and tarsal bones. So carpal bones in your hand. So you can see here, I think believe this is pointing to your trapezium right here. But like I said, all these bones here are going to be short bones. It's not just the trapezium. Your scaphoid is going to be a short bone. Your pisiform is going to be a short bone. You know, your hamate, lunate, capitate, all those going to be short bones. So same thing with your tarsal bones. The calcaneus, your navicular bone, the talus, all those going to be short bones. And they function by providing stability and minimal motion. So next one, whoops. Next one is going to be flat bones, I believe. If I can find it, I don't know where it's at. Oh, there it is. Alright, so these typically are thin, curved bone. Good example is the four main bones of your cranial cavity, which is your frontal, your parietal, your temporal, and then your occipital bone. And then also your ribs, another good example of flat bones. Your ribs, I can kind of see why you might think they're long bones, but they are classified as flat bones. And I think what you can use to tell that apart is the function here, which is protection for internal organs, or the attachment for muscles. The long bones do serve as attachment points for muscles. Obviously, your femur, you have your quadriceps, your hamstrings, so that's important. But like I said, this right here, your protection for internal organs, I feel like, for me at least, that's kind of the distinctive feature. So that's you can keep in mind. Your ribs, like I said earlier, protect your lungs, your heart, the internal organs over there. So that's how you can tell it apart. And then the next, I believe, is irregular bones. These bones don't really have a pattern, right? So they're going to vary in shape and size. So it's more so complex. There's no real way to define it in terms of long or short or flat. So they just call it irregular, pretty short, sweet. They function to protect internal organs as well. And then good examples here are going to be your vertebrae, and then also your facial bones, so your maxilla, which is like your mustache here, your mandible, which is going to be your jaw. Got a good jawline there. And then your zygomatic bone, stuff like that. And finally, we have here your sesamoid bones. These are smaller, rounder bones that are found within tendons. So a good example here is your patella. Your patella articulates with the femur bone, and then your tibia bone, and it kind of joins with the two and protects the tendon that's in between those two bones. So like I said, functions to protect the tendons by reducing stress and pressure, or from pressure. Your patella is, at least from what I found, the most headline sesamoid bone, very important, and probably the most well-known one. So that covers all of the slides. We'll get in here to the quiz questions. I'll go over it with you guys, explain my, thought process, what goes through my head as I'm looking at these questions as if it was my first time. So, what is a function of, which is not a function of bones? I do that all the time. I always miss the word not, and it messes me up severely. Can't be doing that. Don't do what I do. So which is not a function of bones. So we have fat storage. Remember, we went over that. That's going to be in your yellow bone marrow. Hematopoiesis, same thing, went over that. That's your red or blood cell in general production. That's going to be in your red bone marrow. Protection and support. Yep. I mean, you have your tendons, your ligaments for the movement, which I know that's not part of that, but and you have your protection from your axial skeleton, support for the entire framework, so that's going to be correct. You can cross all these out, which means that D should be the correct answer. Why is D the correct answer? Well, you think back and you're like, well, we just talked about, being able to obtain energy from the bones. And that's true. You can obtain energy from the bones, but it's already stored that way. The energy was not produced in the bones. The fats were not produced in the bones. They were just stored in the bones. So keyword there is production. The production takes place elsewhere, which we'll get into later, but it does not occur in the bones. So gotta be careful with that. Where are fats stored in the body? Well, we just answered this in the last question, so what do you guys think the answer is? Well, red bone marrow, remember we said, was hematopoiesis. That's going to be your blood cell production. Your periosteum, we haven't covered that yet, so probably not going to be that. But periosteum is essentially like an outer layer here of your bone. Spongy bone, remember we said, kind of associated with red bone marrow. It's not necessarily the same thing, and it does not function in the same way as red bone marrow. But you get my point, not going to be the answer. So yellow bone marrow will be the answer here. And that makes sense based off what we just talked about in the last quiz question. Alright, what occurs in the red bone marrow? Once again, just talked about this. It should be an easy one. Energy production, remember, bones don't do that, so you can cross that out. Hematopoiesis, that big long word, sounds familiar for the red bone marrow. We're going to think that's probably it. Fat production, we just talked about, went into the yellow bone marrow. And then mineral storage, that's going to be stored in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals. Another big word, but it's not the right big word. So we're going to go here with hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis, remember again, is going to be your blood cell production. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Alright, so again here into the classifications. Just went over this, so should hopefully be a breeze for you guys. If not, just take some more time to go back, and whether it's on this video or on Instagram, and go through the slides and try to remember the distinctive features or the functions that would help you remember. So whatever helps you guys remember, then just do that. So what is this bone classified as? So the bone we're looking at here is this. Now this is the humerus bone, but even if you don't know that off the top of your head, you can use the shape of the bone, the appearance of the bone, to determine what the classification will be. So let's say we don't even know it's the humerus. So we see that it's pretty long compared to other bones, but it's not very wide. Maybe this wide. Alright, so we know it's going to be the long bone. Remember, that's the distinctive feature of long bones. They're longer than they are wide. Short bones are kind of cube-like, so that's not cube-like at all. Irregular bone is just weird shaped, it's complex, it has no pattern to it. This kind of has a distinctive shape. And then flat bone, remember that's going to be your cranial bones or your ribs, stuff like that. So the answer there will be long. And then we have, what is this bone classified as? Once again, I'm pretty sure I'm using the same pictures here that I used in the slides, but it is what it is. Same thing to help you guys learn. So once again, I think this is pointing to specifically your trapezium, if I remember correctly. But still, if you don't know the bone, it does not matter. It should not change, your ability to figure out the answer here. So it's not going to be flat bone. Sesamoid bone, it's not protecting a tendon, and it's not round, circular. Irregular bone, I could see why you might think that it's an irregular shape, based off the way some of these look, but it's just short bone is a better answer. And remember, short bones, your most common, examples are going to be those carpal bones and those tarsal bones. So yeah, keep that in mind. Those are pretty staples for your short bones. So should be a relatively easier answer there. Alrighty, this looks like the scapula to me. So irregular, no chance. Long bone, nope, looks pretty wide. Sesamoid bone, it's not really within a tendon, protecting a tendon. So, and remember, your main one there is going to be the patella. So if we're going to answer sesamoid at some point, it's probably going to be about the patella. So that's going to be your flat bone. You can see it's kind of flat here. So that will be your answer there. Your good old vertebrae. This one here, what do you guys think it is? Give you a good zoomed in chance to look at it. Now remember, each of these is a different bone. Like, they all are connected, but you have singular vertebra. So it's not going to be long bone. Short bone, they're not cube-like in any way. Flat, definitely not flat. So it's going to be irregular here. Kind of a weird shape. So irregular makes sense. And then finally, and what I think should be the last question, is going to be the patella. Now remember, I just said if we're looking at the patella, it's probably going to be what kind of bone? Sesamoid bone. Short bone, I could kind of understand if you think that, but remember, the key feature of sesamoid bones is that it's located within a tendon to protect a tendon. So it's going to be your sesamoid bone here. Short bone, no. Irregular bone, no. Flat bone, no. So I believe that is the last one. Yeah, it should be. Once again, this is kind of the basics, beginning of bone anatomy. Pretty important. Function is very important. Classifications helps when learning bones later down the road. And just stuff you kind of need to know when it comes to your anatomy class, or just learning for the fun of it, or whatever. I think next video we get into bone structure, using the basic long bone. I think we're probably using the femur as an example, but so look out for that. I appreciate you guys watching. Like and subscribe, and until next time, peace.